Hello and welcome back to the Functional Effect Optimization Group. I am Coach Sarah.
I'm Dr. T.
And as always, we are super happy to be here with you. We also have Nurse Rachel in the audience here. So we are super excited to be here, as always, to talk all things health and wellness. And if you have been following along with us over the last 8 weeks or so, we've talked about a lot of things. And as we've unpacked each layer of this onion, it's brought us closer and closer to what we're going to be talking about today, which is the reality of the difference between standards and expectations. Most people operate from a set of expectations, but somewhere along the way, they forget that there's standards necessary in order to achieve those expectations. They expect the scale to move. They expect their motivation to stay high, their schedule to be cooperative and flow perfectly, and their life to be calm.
Everything's gonna just go.
But expectations are tied to outcomes that we can't fully control. Standards, on the other hand, are very different. Standards are the behaviors that we refuse to negotiate with. And the moment that you shift from expectations to a set of standards that you're not willing to negotiate with, I'm here to tell you that everything will change. That is the pivotal moment. And we're going to talk more about this and dive into that idea of having this pivotal moment in a little bit. But the question stops from being, did I get the outcome that I wanted? To did I meet my standard for the day?
Mm-hmm. And this piggybacks off again of what we talked about in the past. And I think a large one of the main topics I can think of is when we talk about systems. Right. And so like there's motivation versus your system. And that definitely standard and system, there's a lot of parallels to that.
Absolutely. So when we talk about the distinction between expectations and standards, I think it's important to understand that language matters. And some people might say that there's not a big difference between those two things, but expectations are really fragile and they depend on things going really right. Standards, on the other hand, are resilient, unwavering, and steadfast in the face of the proverbial poop storm.
Mm-hmm.
So if you have an expectation mindset, what might that sound like?
Well, I think it could look like a lot.
It can,
So,
but what are some of the things that you see as a health and fitness professional
well,
often?
Everyone thinks that their week's going to go smoothly. It's not. There's like no way that's going to happen. What you like, I expect to keep myself motivated.
What about
That's
expectations
tight
with
end.
weight loss?
Weight loss, you're like, oh, I expect to lose 8 pounds this month, right? And they're putting a very specific expectation of goal, which may or may not happen because life is not a linear path.
And so when we switch that over to a standards mindset, it sounds more like I move my body every day versus I expect to lose 8 pounds this month
I'm prioritizing protein in each meal
versus I'm going to eat perfectly this week.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I plan to go to bed at 9 p.m. every night this week versus I want to get more sleep. Outcome, expectation versus standards that you're setting for yourself. So when you're looking at standards, you're really looking at an outcome basis. Achieving an outcome without examining the standards at which you need to hold yourself in order to become that person.
Which definitely is not an easy thing to do. It takes some planning.
Well, and the thing is that most people drop their standards the moment that life becomes inconvenient.
Yeah, absolutely.
So it's really how do we become more like the person we want to become? It's by upholding better standards and staying true to those. And like every week, we've come to you with an applicable, actionable framework for
systems,
this.
baby. Systems. I love them. You need to love them. It's what works.
And this is where the pure framework comes in. So, PURE. It is not a framework that was developed by me. It was a framework that was developed by a man named Aaron Keith Hawkins, who is a motivational speaker. He's very highly intelligent gentleman, and I heard him speak about this back in I think 2018. And it's something that has always stuck with me as a no brainer framework for when you're trying to make changes and upgrade your life in any way. I don't care if it's your health and fitness, I don't care if it's your career, even your relationship.
Marriage.
This applies. So the pure framework starts out with the P, and the P stands for the pivotal choice. Every day that you wake up and are breathing and have a heartbeat, you have a pivotal choice to show up in the way that you want to become the person that you want to be. These are the small moments where you're going to decide what those standards are going to look like and whether or not you're operating from a set of expectations. So, an expectations response might look something like, I had a stressful day, so today doesn't count. I'm going to go ahead and eat whatever I want for the rest of the day. A standards response to a stressful day might look like, I had a stressful day, so I'm going to be doing the minimum version of my standard for today. So recognizing that when you have a set of standards put in place, that it doesn't require you to operate in a place of black and white. It actually gives you more flexibility to operate in gray space while still preserving the standard at which you're trying to uphold.
Because what do we typically do in those situations where it's stressful, it's difficult? We negotiate, otherwise known as what in coaching terms, write yourself a permission slip.
And standards remove the ability to negotiate. You give yourself a minimum standard, you give yourself an ideal standard, and you give yourself your maximum standard. And anywhere within that standard is acceptable. It's setting the standard and understanding what that looks like where most people drop the ball. So standards remove the ability to negotiate. And that's the main thing that I want you to take away from that first one. Now, as we move on to the U, this might be arguably the most important letter of this acronym, as this stands for unconditionally high standards. This is the core of the talk. So I really want you to take this in. Make sure that you're not distracted, turn down all the background noise, and I want you to listen very closely to what I'm about to say. Most people have standards, but they hold them when they sleep well, when their day's gone well, when their kids are being nice, when their motivation is high, when the weather is sunny, when it's the perfect temperature, when their mood is in the right place. That's when they uphold their standards. But the moment chaos enters, the standards disappear. Unconditional standards means your identity does not change based on your circumstances.
Yeah. So most people look at the unconditional to the conditional. Things are never going to go really well in life. Like as much as you have a high, we know you're going to have a low.
They're going to go good sometimes.
And so when people look at that they're looking at, oh, I work out, when I have time. That's what's gonna happen. Instead of, I have a system and I have a plan that's going to work. And that's like that's the unconditional standard of, I get 3 workouts in a week. It's not just, oh, well, when I get to it, I get to it.
Well, and even that flexibility of recognizing what is your minimum for that standard. The minimum might be, I get a minimum of 2.
Or it's a minimum of like, I got outside and walked today. Or like, it doesn't have to be a 1-hour workout. That's Correct. Not what has to happen.
Correct. So recognizing that it becomes prioritizing the standard over prioritizing the way that you feel in terms of motivation, because motivation is fleeting, motivation is temporary, And if you rely on being motivated to show up all of the time, like we've talked about ad nauseum in this group, you will fail
Yeah.
because motivation is not permanent, but systems are. And systems can be tweaked and changed and groomed to what you need them to be as your life and the seasons that you're walking through change. So having unconditionally high standards doesn't mean that when life flips, that your standards flip. It means that you move with it and you make adjustments as necessary. Now, as we move into the R, reflective comparison can be a little bit of a tricky thing because oftentimes we don't even realize that we're playing the game of comparing ourselves to others.
Mm.
We don't even realize we're doing it. And if you were to ask someone if they're doing it, their reflexive knee jerk reaction might be like, no, I'm not comparing myself to others. But when you scroll social media, when you get on TV, when you are consuming media, that's all we're doing is playing the comparison game.
Yeah, I've looked and coached people for almost 20 years now. When I look, men and women are slightly different on how they do comparison. It's not exact. Now it's gotten closer as social media has been infiltrated into our life more and more. It's getting closer and closer. That gap's closing. So doing this, women usually compare themselves to other women, while men compare themselves to past selves. So guys will say, "Oh, I want to get in shape like I did when I was in college." Well, dude, you're 52 years old. You're not 21. That's a ridiculous comparison, right? Like that, you're not that person anymore. There's so many different things that change it. Or a woman will say, I want to look like that person. I want to look like that. Well, you're not that person. And so that comparison really skews what's realistic for your life.
And so when we talk about what does reflective comparison need to look like, it's comparing yourself to the reflection of the person you're trying to become,
Ah, your future self,
your future self.
not your past self.
And that's again where for women, we're comparing ourselves to others. For men, we're comparing ourselves to an unattainable past version of self because time doesn't back up. And so when we can maintain reflective comparison as our standard, we're going to ask ourselves, what would the highest version of myself have done in this situation?
Yeah.
Reflection creates awareness, and awareness allows for adjustment, unlimited amounts of adjustment. So, reflective comparison is our third portion of this acronym. And to wrap it out and round it out, that E is elevating your situational response. So, I want to ask you a question. When you are put in the face of stress and you are given a poop hitting the fan type of situation, what is your knee jerk reaction? Do you get angry? Do you blow up? Do you shrink away and get small and get quiet? We all have a typical knee jerk reaction to chaos and to situations that we can't control. But elevating your situational response means asking yourself, what is the highest version of myself going to do in this situation? And how is the highest version of myself going to show up differently than I currently am? And I will tell you right now that the hardest part about doing this exercise is doing it without shame and doing it without guilt. Because we are going to want to beat ourselves up when we go through this exercise. But this exercise is the one where you are trying to align the current version of self with the future version of self, and you're trying to get them to shake hands. And if you don't do this step, if you do not try to get your current self to meet your future self and shake hands, you will fail. It will all be for naught. So I encourage you to, again, if your current response to having a bad call or having a bad moment in your day is like, this day is effed, examine that knee jerk response and ask yourself, how would the highest version of myself show up in this situation? And what would she say? What words would she allow to come out of her mouth? Because we've talked about this before. Life and death is in the power of the tongue.
Yes, it is.
And if you continually tell yourself today's effed, eventually it will be. Eventually it will be. So to bring it all together, pure as a loop, pivotal choice, unconditional standards, reflective comparison, and elevated response. Repeat that cycle daily, and you will slowly and intentionally become the version of yourself that you desire to be, no matter what that looks like. No matter if it's in your health, your wellness, your career, your relationships, your parenting. I do not care where you apply this framework to, but if you do it and you do it consistently, you will have no other choice but to develop into this higher version of yourself.
Yeah. And if you look at, I mean, you have to do some self-analyzing, like where do I typically fall apart? What part of my life is when things get hard, what part starts collapsing down? And this is where you would use the pure method to go through it. And obviously, and like you said, it's hard. It's not an easy thing. But if you want to become this person, like this person who you know you could be, but those standards have to change.
Yeah. Your life will always reflect your standards, not your expectations, not your intentions, but your standards. And the pure framework will give you the exact process for how to show up and live in those standards, especially when life throws you a curveball. Because life is going to throw you the inevitable curveball. Like he talked about, things are not always going to be roses. Life can be really great, but life can also throw you a right hook right in the jaw when you least expect it. And you have to know how to pivot. You have to know how to pick yourself up and dust yourself off and keep moving forward, even when you don't feel like it. Because you're going to have days where you don't feel like it.
Yeah, and then failure to me has always been you truly fail when you stop.
That's
But
the thing.
but if you don't stop and you learn it as it's a learning experience through failure, and I've failed I don't know how many times, I can't count. And then you learn and you move on going forward. So you fail yourself to success, and this is one of the frameworks to use to help yourself get to where you ultimately want to be.
And the beautiful thing about the pure framework is that there's no speed at which you need to apply the steps. This is apply at your own pace, move at your own pace, and take it micro steps at a time.
Mhm.
There's no need to take big bites. How do we bite or how do we eat an elephant? One bite at a time, baby. And it's as small of a bite as you need.
Most people way overestimate what they can get done in a year, but they extremely underestimate what they can get done in a decade.
Yeah. So, with keeping all of that in mind, as always, our goal is to leave you with actionable steps to take away, apply to your life, and ask yourself that question of how does this apply to me? Not every call is going to directly apply to you, but there's going to be bits and pieces that we hope are going to make you think. And we hope they're going to make you sit with yourself in a different way and assess your own behavior through a lens of compassion versus a lens of judgment and shame and guilt. Because we've all, and we are all still on that journey of self exploration and growth. And we're always very honored when you choose to show up and go on that journey with us because we're still growing and learning right along with you.
Yeah.
So until next week, same time, same station. We appreciate you being here, listening, and hanging out with us this Thursday night. And we'll talk to you next time. Remember, you deserve to feel your best.